1 in 5 children are considered obese, but just what is childhood obesity and why is it a concern? Our Jasmine Bird tells us in this week's Wellness Wednesday.
Childhood obesity measured by excess body fat.
Anytime there's rapid weight gain in childhood that keeps going, that's when we worry about obesity.
Obesity can start very early, even in infancy, in the first 6 months of life.
If a child gains weight and then they maintain that same pattern of growth throughout childhood, that's not as concerning as if we see very rapid weight gain.
Most of the time, however, this excess weight gain can start anywhere from 3 to 4 years old.
Sometimes in the school age range, and then it continues into the teen years and into adulthood.
So what are some of the health risks associated with obesity, especially in young children?
The most common complication in a young child would be sleep apnea, and that's simply from excess pressure on the neck. So a child would have trouble breathing at night, and the parent might hear snoring. As you get into the early school age children, we can start to see things like high cholesterol and fat deposits in the liver.
And then in later childhood,
around the pre-adolescence age, we start to see prediabetes and even diabetes.
And what could be some of the causes of obesity?
Definitely some genetics component to it, but there's also, availability. So it is much easier and cheaper to get foods of higher calorie density type foods, foods that aren't good for your nutrition. But also there's increased screen time now.
And a lot of times we tough through things until we can't anymore.
A character trait some men tend to have in common.
Men are generally looked at as, they generally don't think about their health as much as women do, I think.
And UAB Nursing School of Medicine assistant professor and family medicine physician Marshall Pritchett believes, as a result, this is usually what happens next.
We have a heart attack. We have a stroke. We have something that stops us in our track, and now we have no choice but to pay attention to our health.
It's also important to know and ask your family members about their health history.
You always want to know, okay, if dad has history of prostate cancer, maybe I have an increased risk for prostate cancer. If dad has history of diabetes or mom has history of diabetes, then maybe I should go and get checked out for these things sooner than later.
Prostate cancer is the #1 cancer seen in men in the United States.
And it's the #2 leading cause of cancer death in men in the United States as of, I think, 2019 is the last time they did their compilation of data.
So at the end of the day, what's the first step to helping encourage the men in your life to stay healthy?
The first step is just walking through the door, talking to your primary care doctor, developing a relationship.
While urgent care is great,
when you come to your primary care doctor, they know who you are. They know something's off. Even when you're like, my blood pressure's not terrible, but something's off.
That staying physically healthy is one way women can improve emotional well-being, and taking steps to prevent illness includes routine gynecologist visits. In today's Wellness Wednesday, our Jasmine Bird gives us a deeper dive into young women's health and the importance of annual OBGYN visits.
I really encourage any teenager that is having any questions about sexual health, about their periods, about routine health care, come visit their gynecologist or establish care.
Whether you're sexually active or not.
Sexual health is just one part of my role in their health care. There's painful periods, there's problems with mood and mental health, there's issues with weight and different things like that I can play a role in as part of their healthcare team. I think there's a lot of different parts of that conversation that we can have. And sexual activity, while important, and we will always ask about it, is not the main reason that you have to come to a gynecologist.
And should a woman have an abnormal pap smear result? What is a pap smear, and what exactly does that abnormal result mean?
Pap smears are a screening test for cervical cancer. It's screening for cellular changes that can occur, most often caused by a virus called human papillomavirus, or HPV. HPV is a very, very common sexually transmitted infection and can occur at any point in a woman's lifetime, but increases that risk of cellular changes. The Pap smear helps us detect those changes early so that they can be monitored and treated if needed to help prevent cervical cancer.
So at what age is a young woman encouraged to see a gynecologist?
I still would encourage every woman to come every year, especially after the age of 21.
And another thing to note.
I think that the HPV vaccine, the vaccination protective against certain strains of the HPV virus, is always an important part of the conversation that we have with teenagers. The younger you are when you get that vaccination, the more effective it is at preventing certain HPV infections later in life and can help significantly decrease your risk of developing cervical cancer.
In Huntsville, Jasmine Bird, Fox 54 News.